Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake up a cocktail or other mixed drink, we sip on it, see how it tastes, talk a little bit about its history and some variations. We're continuing to work our way through what the IBA considers the official list of cocktails to see how those are and how official and memorable they are. We're in the unforgettable section, and this week our unforgettable is the Gin Fizz. Now, the Gin Fizz is part of a family of drinks called Fizzes. That is a category unto itself. There are many variants for it. You can also make it with many different base spirits, though gin appears to have been, at least early on, the most commonly used, and the preparation fairly simple. The history here is not as complex as some of the episodes we've looked at, but also not as detailed. The first mention of Fizzes as such with that name, although with only one Z rather than two in the word fizz, is from the great Jerry Thomas, who wrote essentially the first cocktail guide in the late 19th century, the Bon Vivant's Companion. Now that is a very important book, tells us a lot about history of cocktails and had several revisions so we can see how things changed over time. We've mentioned it before, we'll mention it again, and if you haven't read Imbibe, David Wondrich's book, which goes through the Bon Vivant's Companion and tells its history as well as looks further at the drinks' histories, you should do, so please do. Now, Jerry Thomas in the book doesn't claim to have invented this drink, as he does with some, but also he doesn't ascribe it to any inventor, and we have no historical evidence of it existing before that, at least under that name. Now, once we make the drink, some of you, even if you're not familiar with the Fizz now, may notice it's incredibly similar to a Collins. It's also incredibly similar to something called the Daisy, but you probably won't have heard of that if you haven't heard of a Fizz. And they are incredibly similar. I don't want to get too deep into that history because the Collins is an official drink that we'll be getting to in just a few weeks here, and so we'll talk more about that then. But the short difference is that a Collins is built, meaning it is made in the glass that you're serving it in, rather than shaken or stirred with ice and then put into the glass. So a Collins generally has ice in it, a Fizz generally doesn't, with some caveats. We'll talk about that in the Collins episode. Therefore, a Fizz also has a lot more possibilities to it. If you're building something straight in a glass and just stirring it a little bit, maybe over ice, as in a Collins, adding things like egg white or cream or other mixers like that, just not going to work well. You're going to end up with a tall glass of bits of egg, and that's no fun. Whereas in a Fizz, since you're shaking it, you get lots of options. Now, what is a Fizz? So it's a very simple drink. It's a base spirit, again, traditionally gin, though anything you want. Then there's going to be some sort of a citrus element, a sweetness element, and then it's going to be topped with seltzer water or carbonated water. The Fizz comes from just the addition of the carbonated water. Also, depending on how you make it, you can get it such that the carbonated water fizzes up quite a bit in the drink as you put it in. And that's really all there is to it. So we're going to make 3 different variants of it today. We're going to make the IBA spec variant, though I think I'm going to deliberately use the wrong glass for that for reasons. And then we're going to make something that would be very accurate to sort of Jerry Thomas's time, sort of when the Fizz first came into popularity, 1880s-ish. And then finally we're going to do a weird variant that I have no idea if I'm going to like. So with that out of the way, let's get right to the IBA version. Alright, so for the IBA version, in our mixing tin, we're going to start with 10 milliliters, or 1/3 of an ounce, of simple syrup. Now I find that interesting because simple syrup is in the earliest recipes, but there's quite a few early recipes that prefer sugar for a couple different reasons, one of which we'll talk about. And the IBA usually loves to make me use sugar, as we discussed at length last episode. So, thank you to them for letting me use simple in this. Though this is one drink where there is actually a reason why you might want to use sugar, so I find that odd, but whatever. Then we're going to need our citrus component, which is lemon juice, and if you watch the show regularly, you'll know my ongoing struggles to find a lemon that's a reasonable size. So, yet again, unlike, I believe, last week when I had one that was the size of a grape, I now have one that's roughly the size of a grapefruit. So, I don't know why, but I cannot win with lemons. So again, we're going to actually use this style reamer juicer rather than a regular lemon juicer. And I've just realized the error of my ways that I was going to garnish this with lemon zest, and I haven't taken that off the only lemon that I have, but we will make that work. So of that lemon, we want 30 milliliters or 1 ounce. And then finally, gin. So in the IBA, this one just says gin. Some recipes in the IBA will specifically say dry gin, tom gin, etc. This one just says gin, which I think, as we'll talk about in a minute, historically this should definitely be a tom drink. But in the modern age, if you just tell someone gin, they're gonna reach for a London Dry or a modern botanical gin or something like that. So in order to sort of get that accurate experience, I'm gonna use the Aviation. And we want 45 milliliters, so that's about 1.5 ounces. And that is the bulk of the drink. I'm gonna grab some ice and we'll shake it. And then quite against the rules, both because I don't have quite enough Fizz glasses and because the proportions that they give don't make sense to fill even a small Fizz glass, I'm gonna weirdly make this in a Nick and Nora and we'll see how it goes. But I don't think it's gonna fizz up that much, so I think it's fine. I say as I'm about to be proven wrong. And then we need just a splash of soda water. And again, I don't have a lot of headroom left after that fill line, but it says a splash. So unless by splash they mean ounces, this is gonna be perfect for us. Now, we did do almost a whole episode on different soda waters and which ones are better and things. Unfortunately, there seems to be some sort of major outage of soda waters and seltzers at all of my local grocers. So I have what I'm assuming is just the best of the best, which is, of course, Kroger's Club Soda. So we are going to top with a bit of that. Not a lot of fizz happening, as I expected. And then for garnish, it wants some lemon zest, which again I have forgot to do before cutting the lemon, but we will get some. Turns out if you smack the glass and it's really full, it spills all over. So I don't advise that. And that is, other than the glass choice, the IBA spec of the Gin Fizz. Let's see how it is. Wow. Delicious. Not a lot of gin happening. Now I did use Aviation, which is fairly mild. I mean, this is lemonade with just this bit of herbaceousness. There's no alcohol present. And yeah, the gin, just, you can tell that there is some sort of botanical, some sort of spice happening that would not be in lemonade. And I mean lemonade in the American sense, any UK viewers. I don't mean lemon lime soda. I mean basically lemon, sugar, and water. Which is mostly what this is. But, well, it's lovely. There's not enough soda water. It's really not effervescent almost at all. Which again, I think the IBA intends it to be more so, because if you look in their photo, they have a substantial sort of head of foam happening. But if that's what they want, then they shouldn't give me the instructions of a splash of soda water, because I put in at least a splash. I got no fizz, I got no foam. Well, that is lovely and dangerous. I'm going to set that aside and come back. We'll do another variant. For variant 2, we're going to go back and make something a little more old school. So we're going to be changing the gin type, the proportions, and some of the build instructions. Now this is not quite the Jerry Thomas version, We are going to use his proportions, but we're going to change the build to more account for how a lot of people at the time made it, especially some of those who were known as masters of the fizz specifically, which oddly there were multiple bartenders specifically known for their fizzes. So let's take a look at how we might do that. This time we're going to start off with our lemon juice in here, and we're looking for the for about half an ounce. You could go a little bit higher depending on how lemony you want yours to be, but somewhere around half an ounce. And then our gin. Now here we're going to bump up the proportions. We're going to go to 2 ounces, which would be 60 milliliters, and we're going to go to Old Tom, which would be period accurate. Drier gins did exist in the time, but they were not common outside of England, and they weren't that common inside of England. So we're using Hayman's Old Tom. And that, interestingly enough, is all we're going to put in the shaker for the shaking portion of the drink. We are going to add sugar, but that's going to come quite a bit later. So let me get some ice. We'll shake it. Ice away. Here we go. And we're going to go ahead and strain that into our highball glass of some kind. It's really slightly too big for a fizz. It's a little bit small for a Collins. Not entirely sure what this drink is ideal for, other than just maybe a straight whiskey highball. It did come with some Suntory whiskey box set that someone gave me years ago, so we're gonna make that work. And then we are gonna use some of the seltzer, and we're gonna use a little bit larger quantity this time. Somewhere about there should be good. And then this time we are going to add my old nemesis, ultra-fine sugar, which should actually make this foam up more. So we're going to put in about a bar spoon, maybe just a hair more, and then stir it. And yes, I don't know how well that comes through on camera, but there is a serious foaming action. Tried to put it near the mic to see if you could hear it. And obviously this is underfilled for this glass, but that's why I didn't make the IBA version in this glass, because it was even smaller volume. So he does not say to garnish it, he says to just drink it right away, get it down. It's one of the other differences between a fizz and a Collins. Let's see how it is. So here I definitely have more of the gin coming through with the lower proportion of lemon juice. And actually a slightly lower proportion of simple as well, I think. If we were to work that out, since this is 2 to 1, I'd have to do some maths that I'm not terribly interested in doing at the moment, but I think there's a hair less sugar in this as well. So I get more of the gin coming through, but because it is a sweeter gin, it's not abrasive, but I do feel a little bit of spirit heat in this one. I get some juniper. Yeah, but it comes through as you drink it. So you get the hit of the sharpness of the lemon is right at the front. Turns into the sweetness, which is both the gin and the sugar. And then right at the end, it opens into suddenly, oh, there's some sort of alcohol and botanicals. That's a lovely drink. Much more complex than the other one. This one would be something I would rather sip if I'm thinking about a cocktail, whereas the other one literally is lemonade. I'd be happy to just drink that because I was a little warm. So both really good, both very, very different. This one actually has some fizz, which is a nice touch. For our final version, we are going to go back to David Wondrich's Imbibe that I was discussing earlier, and we're going to look at the Morning Glory Fizz. Now, this is not his recipe, nor is it Jerry Thomas's recipe. This is from a mixologist called Harry Johnson, but I don't have any of his writings, so we're going to get it from here. This is called the Morning Glory Fizz. As you might be able to guess by the title, this is meant to be the first drink you have in the morning. It's meant both as a hangover cure style drink, but also just in general as a good drink to start your day with. Now, I'm not going to judge you if you're drinking in the morning. I don't know if you're getting up at 6 a.m. that this is what you want to get, but to each their own. I'm going to probably stick with drinking it in the afternoon or evening. But the writer, Harry Johnson, says that It is an excellent one for a morning beverage, which will give good appetite and quiet the nerves. So if that's what you need, try this. I was interested in it because this is one of the very early drinks to use Scotch whiskey in it. Obviously, Scotch whiskey goes back forever, but in using it in cocktails and fizzes and that sort of thing, it's very rare. There's only a few drinks in this is 1880s, 1882, I believe. Very few drinks at that time would have used it. So I thought that would be curious. Scotch for the time, this should be basically a bad single malt Scotch. So what they would have had in a cocktail would have been some sort of a single malt Scotch type product, but not aged for very long, not had time to mellow out, and maybe blended, but if so, just because someone blended something together, not intentionally blended. Today, I think it makes more sense to use a blended Scotch here, both to not waste a really good, well-aged single malt, and because they are meant to be smooth and uniform. So we are just going to use Johnny Walker Black. It's fine, and I think it will be fine in this drink as well. All right, let's make a Morning Glory Fizz. So for this one, we're going to want, it says 3/4 of a tablespoonful of sugar. That is a really difficult thing to measure. I'm just going to put it in a bar spoon. It's going to be just fine. Feel free to adjust to your personal tastes. And we are going to want 1/2 ounce, so 15 mils. Oops, that's slightly much. Of our lemon juice. Then this one we're going to add in 1/2 ounce of lime juice. So that's 15 mils of lime juice. Then we're going to add, for the first time on this channel, absinthe. So we want, it says 3 to 4 dashes of absinthe. I do not have my absinthe in a dasher. So I'm going to call that 1/2 a bar spoon, maybe a little less than 1/2 a bar spoon. Yep, that's more than enough. So we just want the absinthe to scent it, I think. I don't think we're really supposed to deeply taste that in the drink. Then we want 2 ounces or 60 mils of Scotch. Great. So that's our main ingredients. Final piece, an egg white. Plenty. My natural light appears to be leaving me quite rapidly, so apologies if there's any lighting changes here, but let's put our ice in. We're going to give it a shake. Now, we could have done a dry shake since we have the egg white in there, or we can do just as a wet shake, but we want to shake it longer and harder than if we did not have an egg white in. So let's do that. And then we'll strain that into another of my oddly sized highball glasses. And yes, we've got a nice frothy texture already, even without the fizz. But we will top that off with a healthy pour of fizz, which foamed up very readily. That's all we need for this one. No garnish or anything needed once again. We've just got our Morning Glory Fizz. Delicious. This is the least morningy morning drink I have ever had, though. Scotch is very present. It's not bad, not annoyingly. Much like on the old school Fizz, citrus hits you first, then spirit comes through. So the Scotch doesn't punch you in the face or anything, but it is there. The absinthe is there as well, and that's sort of a undercurrent of the entire drink. So from the beginning to the end, that little bit of anise is just there. And then on top of it, you experience citrus first, with a hint of sweet, but there's not that entirely separate sweet section of the taste. Instead, you roll right into the whiskey, and you start to get smoke notes. Yeah, and then those just kind of linger on as the drink stops really having as much flavor on the palate, but it's so thick and creamy with that egg white that you sort of get this slight ending of just like foam, which doesn't really have a flavor, but you experience it at the end. Texture's amazing, foamy, and then as you get to the liquid part, effervescent. Really fun drink. Cool way to use Scotch. I'm not a major Scotch guy, but I could get behind having this as a Scotch drink. Though again, morning drink, I don't know. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, thank you for coming along today as we tried the Gin Fizz in 2 variants and a similar product with no gin involved fizz. Hope you enjoyed these as much as I do and that you'll mix up something like this yourself. Possibilities really are endless here. Pick a base spirit, sugar or simple, some lemon or lime juice, shake it, and then add some carbonated water. You can do it with whiskey, do it with any kind of gin. You can do it with tequila if you wanted to. You can do it with anything. So go ahead and try one. If you liked the video, or even if you just kind of liked the video, be sure to do all those YouTube things and like, share, and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Appreciate any comments if you have thoughts on the video. Check out the blog at shakingandsipping.com, where we have a write-up on this each and every week. And also most weeks we go out to a local bar and try the drink and see what they have going on and what kind of twists they put on it. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at shaking_sipping to see updates and Twittery type things. And until next week, happy sipping. Cheers.